respiratory tract. You can see the larynx from here up is what we call the larynx. You see the epiglottis, which is made of elastic cartilage, and it covers the glottis, which is the opening to the respiratory pathway, right? That's why it's called the epiglottis. It's upon that hole. This large piece is called the thyroid cartilage, and that is made of hyaline cartilage. This next piece down is called the cricoid cartilage, and it's also made of hyaline cartilage. So those three things make up what we're going to look at. It's going to be called the larynx. Now, this is also the larynx here. You see they come off those models. You can see the epiglottis here, and when you turn it around, you see a hole that it covers. There's got a finger in it. That's the glottis, that hole. So when you swallow, the epiglottis covers that hole to open into your respiratory pathway, and you don't inhale your food or water. Front side, there's your thyroid cartilage again. Right below that's your cricoid cartilage. The trachea is that ring cartilage that goes down. You can feel it in your throat. And you can see it best on, well, you can see it on this model too, but you can see it over here. There's the trachea, and all this is hyaline cartilage. The trachea is ring-shaped, C-shaped because of the C cartilage, and then the muscle on the back makes it a D. So the cartilage makes it a C, and the muscle, the trachealis muscle on the back, makes it a D. And it's circular, so it's called ring-shaped. Comes all the way down until it splits. That piece of cartilage there that looks like a little V is called the carina. And the carina is where that trachea splits into two primary bronchi. So the primary bronchi are the first branches off the trachea. And the primaries split into as many secondary bronchi as there are lobes of the lung on that side. So the right side has 3 lobes. So there are 3 secondary bronchi. The left side has 2, and they're a little bit fat on here, kind of more blunt, and they're not as visible as the ones on the right side. So they're right there and there. Now on this model here, you can see the lobes. On the right side, since there were 3 secondaries, there are 3 lobes. Superior, middle, and inferior lobe on the right side. Left side, superior lobe, inferior lobe. Alright, so you can see those. Those are the number of lobes that those secondaries went to. After you get all your branching down, you get to a terminal bronchiole down here, and you have a cluster of air cells called alveoli. And those alveoli, which you're going to have a question over there, which you've already seen, okay? They're made of simple squamous epithelium, right? That's what they're made up of. Remember we talked about that? The alveolar capillary membrane. They're both simple squamous epithelium. It's an extremely thin barrier for gases to go across. So that's how diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs so readily between your blood and the alveoli. So they're made of simple squamous epithelium. 2 other cells that are in there, which we'll go over again, but I'll tell you, the septal cells are surfactant cells that make the surfactant that won't let the alveoli collapse. So you have that residual volume. And macrophages. Macrophages are white blood cells that are going to engulf anything you inhale, like bacteria or fungal spores or pollen, the stuff that may get deep into your lungs. The fixed macrophages in there will phagocytose that. Here's your diaphragm. It's a dome-shaped muscle, and in the relaxed state, it's domed up. When it's relaxed, it's up. When it's flattened, it's contracting. Relax, contracting. Now, up here at the top, this is not the best model. It's that little half medium section guy. Shows the external nerves, your nostrils. And you can see this area here is your nasal cavity. You have those concha in there. They're covered with a mucous membrane, which warms and filters and moistens the air you breathe before it gets to your respiratory tract. There's an opening from each of your nasal cavities, since there's a septum in between there. There's two openings in the back called your internal nares. Those were your external nares. These are your internal nares. Where the nasal cavity opens into the back of the throat, that's called the nasopharynx. That area is called the nasopharynx. This is your tongue here. I made it kind of big. And that's in your oral cavity, so you see a little space here, right below your hard palate, for the rest of your oral cavity. Where your mouth, your oral cavity, opens to your throat, that area is called the oropharynx. And the last part of the pharynx is down here where your larynx is. You see it opens into the throat, because the air can come down into your throat and then enter into your glottis to go down to your lungs. That area of the throat is called the laryngopharynx, because the larynx is in that area. Below the larynx, that throat is now called the esophagus. Below the larynx is the esophagus, which you can't really see on your way. You can kind of see it right there, but if I ask esophagus, it's not going to be on this one. Okay. Did I forget anything on this one? Crickets. Okay. We've seen this, we've seen that. The breathing. Who has a little dome close? Somebody has a dome? Have a dome?
Here you go.
Thank you. Alright. All this is a very cheap, efficient way of demonstrating how you breathe. And this is your chest, your thoracic cavity. It's closed, right? Except for one hole. All it's supposed to have there, that opening is the glottis, right? Got a pair of little lungs hanging down in there. That's the diaphragm. And remember I told you the diaphragm, when it's relaxed, is up, right? So the volume is decreased. It increases the pressure. The pressure is inside of here compared to out here. So you decrease the volume, that increases the pressure. Pressure in here is greater than out in this room. So the lung leaves where it's high pressure to low pressure, so the lungs deflate. When the diaphragm contracts and goes down, it increases the volume in here, and it's greater in here than it is out there. The volume is greater in here. Now, the pressure is less here than out there. So, the lungs are going to inflate. So you increase the volume, you decrease the pressure, and the lungs inflate. You decrease the volume, which increases the pressure, and the lungs deflate. This is showing you how you breathe, and about as simple as I can do it, okay? I think anything else about that. That's what these models are for. To help you understand that, you got to remember, the thing about this is that you got to remember that diaphragm, when it's relaxed, is a dome. It's not straight. When it's relaxed, it's a dome when it's relaxed. So less volume, more volume, less volume, more volume. And you can think of that syringe thing too. You pull that syringe, there was zero volume in there to begin with, wasn't there? You pull that syringe, you're making more volume. And because you got that stuck in a fluid, it's sucking that fluid in, just like it would be sucking air in. And then, when you decrease the volume by compressing that syringe, makes less volume here, you notice that the fluid leaves. The pressure is greater, and now the fluid leaves. Same thing's happening to that. For breathing. Lungs. Teeth. Yeah. I don't know how to read. Alright, you remember we went over the 4 types of teeth, right? Incisors, which are chisel shaped, used for cutting or severing. Your canines or cuspids are conical shaped, for piercing and tearing. Your bicuspids, 2 of those for grinding. And your molars, the last 3, for pulverizing to death. It really pulverizes. It means it mashes it up really severely. It breaks it into little pieces. So it's going to really soften your food and send them to the back. So we're looking at one tooth here. This is most likely a molar. It's got several roots on it. now look at several things. One is you have these things called gingiva, which in the past have been called gums, but that's called gingiva. And this tooth is set in a piece of bony area here, whether it's in your maxilla or your mandible. It's called alveolar bone. And the part that's set down in there is called the root. So we have several parts of this tooth. The crown is the part covered with this white material called enamel. The crown is covered with this white enamel. The root, the parts that go down into this alveolar bone, are covered with the material called cementum. Now, this is the root. So is this. The covering on the outside is cementum. Like the covering of the crown is enamel. The covering of the root is cementum. It's the bone-like material. Now, this tooth that does have a neck, it does have a constriction. On teeth that don't have a constriction for a neck, it's where it transitions from the enamel to the cementum. You can kind of tell if you look close. The transition zone is the neck. Well, the crown is made of enamel, and the root is covered with cementum. What's right below both of those? The dentin, or the dentine, however you want to pronounce it. This golden stuff. It's like a whole bunch of little straws. It's called the dentin. And in the middle, this area is called the pulp cavity. The pulp cavity is unhardened material. So when your tooth was being formed, this part out here hardened. This part did not harden. And it has blood vessels and nerves which were supplying the nourishment and whatever else for directing the development of a tooth, the minerals laid down. And the way that the vessels and the nerves got up in here is through a canal in the root called a root canal. At the end of the root, there's an opening called the apical foramen. Apex, remember, means tip. So it's a hole in the tip, apical foramen. Around the roots, on this model, there are little bitty red lines. The little bitty red lines represent the periodontal ligaments. The little pieces of collagen fibers that hold this tooth in the socket. They go from the cementum to the socket. Periodontal means around the teeth, ligaments. So you can see that on here. Any questions on this one?
No.
The red bone? Isn't there, do we have to know that red around it? Is it a bone? That,
yeah, all this is the alveolar bone.
Okay.
This is all alveolar bone. Okay. Let's look at a couple things. Here are some glands. You have the parotid glands. These are salivary glands. And there's a parotid duct that leads from that to the upper, close to your bicuspids that grow on top. Down below, there are two glands. You can't tell which is which on this model. Okay? I can't tell which is which on this model. But one pair are under the mandible, so they're going to be a little bit more spread out underneath here. And that's called submandibular. And there's one or two in the middle, right in the middle under your tongue, called the sublingual. All three of those are going to secrete cerebrospinal fluid, secrete saliva into your mouth. That's probably low sugar or something. I don't know, maybe high sugar. I just like part of my Easter bunny. So these are your salivary glands making saliva. Now this tube right here is your esophagus. And materials are going to, you swallow, that material you swallow is called a bolus. You swallow it or you drink it, it's fluid, but a bolus. It's going to be milked by peristalsis down towards your stomach. So, your stomach, we have several models. This is the one I like. There's another one over there. And the reason it's over there is it shows rugae real well. This is the model of the stomach. Here comes the esophagus down here. Now the esophagus is going to enter the top of the stomach. And this area or region here is called the cardiac region. where the esophagus enters the stomach because it's close to the heart. So they call it the cardiac region. The sphincter that is here is the lower esophageal sphincter or the cardiac sphincter. Can you see it? No. It's there, but you're not going to find any models that are going to show that sphincter there at all. So the sphincter is right there. This dome-shaped portion of the stomach is the fundus. There's your cardiac region, your fundus, your body, and the pyloric region. It's called the pyloric region because of this valve over here called the pyloric sphincter. You can also see in here all these little folds that increase the surface area for stretching and increase the surface area for glands. There are gastric pits in here for making hydrochloric acid and some other enzymes. That's what all these folds are, the rugae. After this pyloric sphincter, this is part of the duodenum, first part of the small intestine. And on this model, you can see the circular folds, as well as on this model, you can see the circular folds. You can see on more than one model. Circular folds. There are two curves in this stomach, two curvatures. A lesser curvature, this little short one here, versus the greater curvature, the long curve of the stomach. There are pieces of serous membrane that occupy these curvatures, so they're named after it. This one is the lesser omentum. It has fat on it, and that's what anchors the stomach to the underside of the liver. So the stomach's hanging from the liver. This one that follows the greater curvature is attached to an apron that goes down called the greater omentum. You have a lot of adipose storage on that, and it goes over your small intestine. It kind of envelopes over your small intestine. It's kind of, like I said, like an apron. So it's pretty big, and I have a lot of adipose storage on that. Okay. Here's your liver. Liver goes on the right side, and the gallbladder is on the right side. So if you look at this, first of all, you get the falciform ligament. The falciform ligament is what is serous membrane, which holds the liver, it attaches it to the diaphragm and the front part of your abdominal wall, the anterior abdominal wall, so it anchors it in there pretty tight. It's in there pretty well. Pretty good. So you tilt this up, there's the gallbladder on the right side, you can still see that. And you see the network of ductwork down here. Now, the gallbladder has a little tube that leads from it. All these ducts are green. Okay, that's called the cystic duct. Coming from the liver itself, it's like a little slingshot over here. Two little vessels coming like this. The one on that side is the left hepatic duct. Left side. And the one on the right side is the right hepatic duct. The left and the right hepatic ducts come together to form the common hepatic duct. Kind of short on here. And the common hepatic and the cystic go together to form the common bile duct. And the common bile duct can be seen when you put this thing together. Like this. You can see there's the common bile duct continuing down. Here is the pancreatic duct. When those two come together, they form the hepatopancreatic ampulla in the wall of the duodenum. Well, too many things. Here's the stomach, and there's the duodenum coming off. See the common bile duct and the pancreatic duct are joining together right there. And that little green dot right there is a hepatopancreatic ampulla. It's in the duodenum. So you can see how it would occur. And you can the green guys over there, you can see it opened up a little better on that green guy, okay? And you can see the ampulla a little bit better. Okay. That's our liver. Our pancreas. And the stomach. Okay, got those. So look at the small intestine. Your small intestine, it's not the small intestines, it's the small intestine, it's single. It's one tube, it has different lengths to it. So it's just one tube. The three parts, the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. I'm not going to point out anything in here and say, is this the ileum or the jejunum? I'm not going to do that. If I was going to ask, I'd ask you in order, maybe the three parts of the small intestine, or something like that. Over here you see the circular folds that's been opened up. You look down, you see muscle here. Well, if you look close, you can see the arrangement, the direction of the muscle fibers. And you can see that one goes linear, that's lengthwise, it's longitudinal, and one goes around, that's going to be circular. So you can tell one's circular and one is longitudinal. That model back there on the black plaque has some big ones, a big cross-section of this small intestine. So you can see that's up on here quite easily. This is the colon. It goes like this across the front. Remember I told you all these things fit together. That fits together like that. So it goes across like that. Your cecum would have been over here with the appendix hanging off. You have your ascending colon that goes up. Then it bends. It's on the liver side, so it's either called the hepatic flexure, or you can call it the right colic flexure. Then it goes across the front, the transverse colon. And it bends again on the left side, left colic flexure, or splenic flexure. The spleen's on that side. And it goes down, descending colon. So here's the cecum and the appendix, and there's the ileocecal valve where the ileum joins. The ileocecal valve there. So you have the ascending colon, the right colic flexure or hepatic flexure, transverse colon, left colic flexure or splenic flexure, descending colon, and then it makes a medial bend. It curves, goes medial and curves again. Sigmoid colon. Right. Sigmoid means S-shaped. That's what it is. To the rectum. And again, that green model over there shows a rectum and an anal canal on it. Inside of the small intestine, the lining, this is a circular fold. This is one of those circular folds we just looked at. And it's covered with millions of little finger-like projections called villi. This is a villus here. This is one. This is one villus. This has probably got, you probably count 50 or 60 on here, just on this model. All these little finger-like things, each one of those is one of these. So there's probably 50 or 60 or more villi on this. But this is the circular fold covered with villi. Here's a single one. You can see the lacteal in the middle and the capillaries in the middle. You can see that it's covered with simple columnar epithelium. Simple columnar. And you see some goblet cells in here every so often. The top of the simple columnar epithelium have microvilli. You can't see it on the model. You can see it on your PowerPoints, or your book, in your book, lab book, or lecture book. They'll show you the surface of these cells, but you can't see it on this model. We don't have any models you can see the microvilli on. So it's covered 360 degrees by simple columnar cells, and all the simple columnars that are not goblets have microvilli on them for absorption of nutrients. Getting back to this guy. These pouches you see all around, those pouches are called haustra. Each one's a haustrum, so plural is haustra. And there is a linear piece of muscle that goes all the way across, all the way the length of it on top and bottom. That muscle is called the tinea coli muscle. This is a double-layered serous membrane. On this side, it doesn't show what's inside between the membranes, but on this side it does. I don't know why. It should show it on both sides. The arteries and veins and nerves and lymphatics and stuff are all sandwiched in between the two layers of serous membrane. This two-layer, double-layered serous membrane is called the mesocolon. And the mesocolon supports the large intestine. The same thing exists for the small intestine. You can't see it on this model yet. Look in your books. Let's see if you can find a picture. The double-layered serous membrane, the double layer, it goes forward, then it wraps around the intestine. The single layer around the intestine is the visceral peritoneum, but where it leaves and becomes a double layer, it has the blood vessels and lymphatic nerves. That's called mesentery. So the mesentery is a double-layered serous membrane that supports the small intestine, and the mesocolon is a double-layered serous membrane that supports the colon, the large intestine. Forget anything. Only thing that I don't have that you need to look at would be the green plaque models, which the only really two parts that actually shows that we don't have up here would be a nice hepatopancreatic ampulla, and then the duodenal papilla you can kind of make out on the inside lining, and then the anal canal at the very bottom, you can see that. And on the one in the back, it has a really big, a thick muscle for the circular and a thinner one for the longitudinal muscle. You can see that. That's part of the muscularis externa. And then you see the muscularis, and you can see the villi on there, the cuboidal, the clumars, the goblet cells, right, the mucus on there. So it's a good model in itself, okay? It's like a cross-section of mucosal lining. One more thing. Your lung volumes. Remember, vital capacity equals inspiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume, right? Know that equation. Know what the lung volumes are. Know what vital capacity is. All you can blow out. It's all those other three. It's inspiratory reserve volume, which is the maximum amount of air you can inhale above a normal inhalation. Tidal volume, the amount of air you exchange with the environment at rest. And then there's expiratory reserve volume. It's the amount of air you can exhale after you exhale normally. The only other thing we had was residual. Because of the surfactant, that's what the surfactant made it to where the alveoli didn't totally collapse. So whatever air is in there stays in there. You can't blow it out. That's residual air. And just know that definition, because we're not going to do a total lung volume. Total includes residual. Vital does not include residual. Vital is what you live on a daily basis. Inspiratory reserve, tidal, and expiratory reserve. Those are what vital is made up of. If I were to give you a problem, you need to be able to work that problem. The instrument's back there. You have a wet and a dry spirometer. Spirometers are what you use to determine lung volumes with. That's it. One has water, one doesn't. And the charts were just showing you where you found in the general population of individuals your height, how the vital capacity was. Were you average, or were you higher, were you lower than the average person? Your height in the population. That's all I showed you. I think that's it. Anybody think of anything else I didn't talk about?
Vocal folds?
Vocal folds? Those are found inside of the larynx. And it's these folds right there. And we brought a new model over. I'm not sure if that's ours or not over there. It came in today. At least Dr. Plass brought it over. This is the mega larynx here. You can see the thyroid, you can see the cricoid. Here's the epiglottis. When you turn it around, the epiglottis, when you swallow it, goes down and covers the glottis, which is basically this area here. But this model was bought to show how the vocal folds move when you talk. And I'm really hesitant about turning this thing loose because I know somebody's going to break it. But when you say like the letter E, you'll see these things vibrate. See the vocal folds? Opens up. When you talk, these open and they vibrate. Depending on how much air you put by there and how tight you make them, it's going to determine what sound comes out. If you make your voice real high-pitched, you're going to make them tighter, so they vibrate. They're pulled tight and they vibrate like you pull rubber bands or something, you pull it, it gets higher as you pull it tighter. When you pull these things tighter, you send the air through them, and they're going to be a higher pitched sound. And when you make them looser, it's a lower pitched sound. But you can see how they open and close when you pull this thing. I'm just afraid somebody's going to really jerk it and break our cord. But that's why they bought this one. So it's pretty cool. I've never used it before. I probably won't, but it was just got brought in here today, so that's a new model. Okay. That's about it.